I don't get work because of the gear I have. I don't get work because of the credits I have. It's important to have good gear. But most people that come here because
Today on Time We Discuss, I have former classmate, colleague, and friend Eric Astor, and it's time to discuss what it's like to be an audio engineer. Eric, thank you for joining me today.
my pleasure.
This is going to be good. Let's get right into it. A typical day for you as an audio engineer, what's it like?
The great thing about that I enjoy about being an audio engineer is not there's some similarities on any given day, but it's every day is something a little different. Typically, I'm very fortunate. The last 9 years now, I've had my own studio at my house, so I've got one of the best commutes in LA, and come downstairs, get some coffee, help get the kids off to school, and then come down for whatever the day may be. It will be anything from tracking sessions with maybe just a vocalist up to maybe an 8 or 9 piece band, depending on what's coming in. Some days we're just mixing, some days we're just doing edits, some days it's remote, ever since COVID, especially. So yeah, there's a lot of different things, but I'm fortunate to come down into my house and work with music all day. And then I'm fortunate with the most of my clientele is based in either doing works for TV and movies or it's jazz. And we are rarely doing super late night sessions. So I'm actually able to kind of keep a fairly normal schedule, which is great now that I have a family and everything, and put that on repeat.
That is awesome. Now, how typical is that? I'm going to say 9 to 5 for lack of better words. Is that kind of typical nowadays? If you want to do that, that is fine. Or if you're starting out in a studio somewhere, I know you're going to be working the midnight shift. What's that like?
Yeah, I think it really does come down to just the circles you fall into. When I first came to LA, I did a couple of years in live sound, and then I got into a studio that was a really great mid-level studio called Entourage Studios. We got bought out, and the studio was made private after about 10 years. But it was a great place to kind of cut my teeth engineering out here in LA. And there it was anything goes. We did rock sessions, scoring dates, jazz dates, um, you name it, we did it. And so there it was anything goes. I had days where a lot of the union stuff would be typical, like a 10 to 1 and then a 2 to 5. That would be a full day typically. We would occasionally do like 10 and 12 hour days where it'd be like more of a band doing an album situation. And then yeah, there were weeks where I was pulling 15, 18, 20 hours. I mean, there are some weeks when I remember there was one album I would leave every night or every morning, having just started the dishwasher in the kitchen. And I'd come back and it was still finishing as I would start the next day. So, everything goes. Nowadays, yeah, it's a little more regimented just because I've fallen into most of the people I work with they want to stay with that schedule as well. They have families too. They don't want to go late. They don't want to be here super early. And so we try to get most of the work done in the main part of the day. We might go into the early evening, but nothing too crazy. But yeah, if you're starting out, take whatever comes your way. Don't be picky because I used to teach live sound, and I would tell students, you might not like country or you might not like hip hop, but if a gig comes your way and you're starting out and it's in country or hip hop, say yes. And guess what? All of a sudden you like country. And give it a try, because I didn't think I liked country early on, and I got a gig doing it. And by the end of that project, I was like, all right, cool, I'm into it. So be open to things, and it might lead to some very long days, long weeks. But that's the nature of the gig. And then if you're lucky, well, ultimately, if you run into what you really love doing, the schedules kind of doesn't really matter. If you're really happy with what you're doing, it doesn't matter if it's been a 12-hour day. You're still happy doing it. So
That's really cool. Back in early 2024, I was speaking with Lauren Alice. She was a senior communications manager, and she said a very similar thing that you're saying. It's kind of like, something comes up, raise your hand, be that person to do it, and it's
yeah,
going to pay back in dividends. And it sounds kind of like the same thing. If an opportunity comes up and it's country, and you might not like country, still take advantage of it because you don't know how that's going to pay you back.
absolutely. Absolutely. The whole industry is really based on, there's a whole thing about make connections, and it's who you know, but you can't do it with that being your premise. Like, I'm going to make a connection. You make those connections it's an indirect result of other things you're doing. You make the connection by saying yes to a gig and then doing a good job. You know, best story I can give for that was like when I first came out here, I was fortunate back, this was a '04, '05, and Craigslist was much more of a reliable source for gigs at the time. So, that's where most people were posting things. I got a random post. Someone was looking to needed someone to run lights for a opening act at a club in town. And I was like, all right, well, I knew enough to basic lighting. It's like, I can run lights for an artist. Sure. So I put the thing in. I think it paid $50. It was, not much. And
Barely
they're like,
covered the gas to get there.
yeah. And I was like, all right, sound check was at 2 or something in the afternoon. So I go down there to do sound check or just to make sure the light's on. I show up, the artist is there with their manager, and they're trying to get her a record deal and stuff. So it was like a showcase thing for her. And there was no one there. The club's open, but there's no sound engineer there. And so, we wait a few minutes, we find out like they're stuck in traffic, typical LA kind of a thing. And so I'm like, well, I could probably at least get the sound system up and running so you guys can at least start making sounds, whatever. So, check with the manager. They were fine. Yeah, go for it, whatever. And got everything up and running. We got them kind of getting started. So by the time the actual house guy showed up, we were already 50% on the way to being ready to start sound check. And so then, we finished the sound check, no big deal. We had the house guy and I had dinner at the club there. And so we're just chatting and stuff. And then I finished my opening act thing, got my $50 for running the lights. And I'm like, well, I'm here. Like, am I just going to go home and sit and watch TV or, nowadays scroll on whatever, social media type thing? I was like, no, I'm here. Might as well stay. So I stayed and just watched the next 3 acts and ended up just hanging out and basically ended up helping the guy do the changeovers, helped him a little bit with monitors because it was all happening from front of house. And at the end of the night, he was like, hey, you seem like you know your stuff. I know a guy down at this club that's looking for new front of house guys. Give him a call. And that led to a 2-year gig doing front of house at this other club. So you never know what's going to lead to what. So yeah, you have to say yes to everything starting out because just do it. And you'll be surprised at what comes out of it just by showing up and being pleasant, by being professional. That's really how this whole, I think probably every career, but definitely this industry works. It's kind of happenstance as far as what your next step's going to be. You can have a plan. I had a plan. It was not, I did not end up using that plan. It's kind of meanders as you go through it.
So you did front of house for a while. How did you transition from that into having your own studio in your house? How did that all come together for you?
Same thing, a whole bunch of crazy, interactions and meetings with people. After about 2 years of doing live sound, it was mostly the schedule that I was like, I'm kind of tired. Like my wife would get home at 5, right as I was leaving for the night, and I'd get home around 2 or 3. So after a while, it's like, all right, this is not what I came out here to do full time for the rest of my life. And so I, again, looked on Craigslist and at the time, and there was a studio looking for engineers or for assistants, I think they were actually calling for. Went down, happened to get an interview, and I'm sure we'll hit on this later if we talk about education. But the big thing, I didn't know this till after they actually got the job, was they had already picked someone else for the job. And then I came in and interviewed, and they liked this way I carried myself. I was able to be polite and professional and laid back. But I also had some other skills, like I knew how to solder instead of just being an engineer. And they're like, well, we're going to be recommissioning a room. We could really use that. And the fact that I had had some engineering experience. So that got me in the door. And, then it's just a matter of just showing up, proving what you can do. And I quickly went from assistant to engineer there in a matter of weeks. And I was fortunate there because it wasn't a huge studio. We weren't getting the big gold record, big name bands coming through, but I got to work a lot. I wasn't just assisting all the time. So that was helpful. And there I met a producer who happened to be moving out of the one room that they were recommissioning and was starting his own studio, which was this place here. So he and I met, and I worked with him for that next couple of months pretty closely on different projects. And then throughout, even when he was up here then at this spot, he would give me a call when he needed extra help or, and all that. So we kept a good relationship and worked together quite a bit. So it just worked out that the studio I was at Entourage, got bought out, which was just the nature of the industry changing where it was, and keeping the building open as a commercial studio was really hard. So it was for the best, I think, for everybody that it's still a studio making music. It wasn't converted into apartments, which was great. Um, and just crazily enough, after about a year of just looking around the town trying to find different spaces for my clients to work, um, I got an email from this guy, who said, "Hey, if you know anyone looking to buy a house, we're moving to Nashville. We're going to do our own shift." And I was like, "Oh, that'd be cool, but I don't have the gear to fill out a studio space." And was very fortunate that they were looking to rebuild it with a different package as well. So they were selling the console, the microphones, the grand piano, all of that stuff. And I was like, all right, this was, again, had my plan, but the universe was like, hey, here's something, say yes, kind of a thing. And I was fortunate. My wife was on board for trying something crazy as well. And so we put an offer in. And again, I think part of what helped it was we had a good relationship. The guy and I had been on good terms the whole time. So it was, I think it was a good business deal for both of us. We made it a package that worked for both of us, and we still work together to this day. We're doing a session tomorrow, actually. So it's worked out, but it's that balance of luck and perseverance and just being a chill person that people like to work with. It really does make a difference if you can, because we've all been in those situations where it gets stressful, it gets tense, it's a long day, something's not working right, whatever that case might be. And especially in this industry, if you can be someone that keeps a cool head, even if someone's around you isn't keeping their cool, it will be to your benefit. Because the people that don't, I've realized over the years, they're not around as much as other people. They just don't get the calls as much. So, personality goes a long way.
That's so interesting. I was speaking with Roger Smith. He is a CTO and author, and had a very, very similar sentiment about being able to stay calm under pressure and being able to just take a second, you know, acknowledge the problem, and then say, okay, how are we going to fix it? And then just
Yep.
going with it, and,
Yeah.
and just talking about how important that is in his role, and it seems like it's very important in your job too. And I get that. That makes complete sense.
Yeah, and especially when you're starting out, because when you're starting out as an assistant, it's always your problem and your fault, whether it is or not. And being able to take that and let everything roll off your back and just know that, because if you're assisting an engineer starting out, they don't want to look bad. And it's not that they don't care or they're on purpose, but it tends to always just divert to you as the assistant. It's like, well, why wasn't this ready? And it does keep you on your toes, because I've definitely helped some engineers out when I was assisting by trying to catch these problems before they became a problem. It's like, and you just kind of politely ask that question, like, oh, did you want that setting like that? Because that's not how you had it before. Oh, yeah, thanks. Right. But when you can handle and not take it personally, because most of the times no one's intentionally making it personal. It's just that it tends to go down to that assistant, or what's the easy scapegoat kind of thing that's going to keep the session going. And if you cannot react to that and just roll with it, um, it gets noticed. And then it's like, oh, you know what? I'd rather have this person assist me again. And you start to get more calls. And from that point on, it works out. But yeah, if you can't keep your cool at the beginning, it doesn't last too long.
I know certain industries do this. I'm curious how this works in the music industry. As an engineer working in a studio, small studio, large studio, whatever, are you expected to bring in clients? How does that typically work?
It depends on the space. And nowadays, the whole industry is the Wild West again, where there's it always the answer to most questions now is it depends, and it really does come down to what space you're at. Um, if it's a really like a major studio, like you come out to one of the major cities to get your feet in the door and work as an assistant there, they're gonna, just based on their name alone and their reputation, they're gonna be getting clients. In fact, a lot of those places you might have a client that wants to get in, and sometimes they just can't, whether it's because of budget or just because of the schedule. So, and here at this place, I try not to make too big of a deal of trying to go out and finding projects, because I'm fortunate to have a nice place with a good piano and stuff where I can kind of cater to a slightly higher end clientele than just a typical garage band or something that's really starting out they can find what they need at a lower price point for sure. And it's going to benefit them because they don't need to rush. They can be comfortable. In this situation here, it took a while for the name to kind of get out, people to understand, oh, you were over at this studio, now you've got your own place. But I'm very lucky and I'm very happy that 99% of my business is word of mouth. It's another client saying, oh, we went here, or someone saying, hey, I need to do this project. Oh, you should go over to Eric's place. And that's worked out because one, you always got good people coming in. You always know it's going to be a chill session with a professional session. It's typically great music. I'm very fortunate that every day I'm sitting here on the other side of the glass, listening to some of the top players in the world do their thing. So that's a really cool thing, but then, yeah, there are going to be some situations where you might be expected, or it might be an arrangement where like, okay, hey, here's a space for you to record, but yeah, you need to bring in bands kind of a thing. And if that might be what's best too. There's no one way to make this work.
Okay. Now, does this ever happen where someone already has a recording that they need you to edit or clean up or something like that? Like I was talking to a voiceover audio engineer, Henry Willard, over in the UK, and he was saying sometimes he gets these recordings from people, and the quality might be where he would want it to be. So, what's your experience with that? Does that happen often? Is that rare? How much of a pain is that?
We've finally come out of it being often after the COVID years. And we were lucky that the technology was where it was when COVID did hit, just because a lot of people knew how to record at home, had at least a decent microphone and an interface to record. But yeah, there was a lot of stuff coming in that, especially when you had to match things. Like I knew some other engineers who were doing major TV shows that would have, choir parts coming in, vocal parts coming in, where you had to like have like probably 30 different people sending stuff in, and now you got to make them all sound like they're in the same room. So I felt for him for the amount of work that probably took. And so yeah, there are times where people are recording stuff, whether it's one part that's coming into a larger project, and I need to find a way to make that match. Typically, the two biggest problems are just people being in a room where you can hear the room, and it's not a treated room, so you hear all the echo, and you're trying to get it a little more direct, or it's a noise situation, which typically that's a little easier. So that happens, and then some of the mixing I do as well. I'll get stuff where someone did an entire project on their own, but now they're sending it to me to mix. And yeah, that's part of it. And we're fortunate now that there's so many plugins that can help with that. Like the Isotope plugins are phenomenal as far as what you can do as far as taking out hum and buzz and clicks, rebalancing things. It's really come a long way, which helps. Just ultimately, I think a big thing that I think I figured it out fairly early on that some people don't, is that this is a service-based industry. Yes, you're making a product and the mix and all that, but you're serving your client, you're serving the artist. My only job is to try to help whatever the artist is hearing in their head get onto a medium so they can reproduce it for other people's ears. That's really my job. So whatever it is, whether I record it here and I'm like, great, I know it's going to be good quality, I'm happy with it, or it's stuff coming in that's not good quality, you find a way to make it work, because just saying, well, I can't work with this that's not what my job is. My job is to make it work. And fortunately, we have a lot of tools now to do that.
It's interesting. The very first episode I did, I talked about my role as a web developer, and I was talking about what web development is like for people that want to do that. And I said a very similar thing, where it's like you don't have the luxury of saying I can't do that, or I don't know how to do that. It's like you're getting paid to do that. You got to figure it out, and it's kind of neat to hear the same thing. I want to come back to the customer service industry part of it, but first I want to dabble in education. So going back, you talked about when you first went to the one studio, you said that you knew how to solder. So
Yeah.
let's talk about traditional education route, going through higher ed, getting a degree. How important is that in the world of being an audio engineer? Can you go to like a trade school or pick up stuff online or learn it yourself? How important is a four-year degree?
It depends. It is the answer for everything in the industry. And it's a question of where your background already is. It's a question of what you're looking to do with it. For me, yeah, I wanted to go the college route. I was looking to do maybe the composition or something, and my parents were fortunate enough to come across, and they were like, "Oh, we heard about this recording technology thing. You want to look at that?" Because I had done sound for local theater shows and stuff. I knew enough about a Mackie soundboard that I was like, "Oh yeah, it was kind of fun doing that." And I liked music, obviously, and so for me, finding the program at Lebanon Valley was great as far as it really took care of both of those things. It was the recording and the technology part, and it was the music part. Because I'm not an engineer that is the most. I'm tech savvy enough. I can fix something basic if I have to. I can solder. Um, but I'm not the guy that can tell you what kind of chips are in this console and why they sound better than others. And I'm not the guy that will worry about what the specs are on a certain pair of monitors. I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to make my adjustments if I have to. And I come at it from the angle of the music and the creativity. That's my forte is hearing it musically and interpreting things that way. And then fortunately having the skills to work with all the gear, but I'm always coming at it from that musical standpoint. Some engineers or people that are getting into it are going to be on that technical standpoint. And in that case, maybe, then maybe, yeah, 4 years with all the music and everything else might not be worth it. Go to a trade school, learn the electronics really well. Maybe you are more of a and we need them. We need repair people because a lot of the people that know all this gear really well are aging out and not working as much or at all. And there's still a lot of this gear around that needs to be repaired. So there's opportunities in a lot of different avenues. Now online, yeah, there's a ton of stuff on YouTube and another, like the Pure Mix and these different websites. The kicker is like some of those websites, you can rely on the information you're getting because you're getting it from professionals. YouTube and the some of the other forums and stuff, you got to be careful because anyone can say anything online and you can't take it as gospel because I've seen plenty of things I'm like, that's just not right at all. And so, starting out, it's kind of figuring out what your goals are. How big do you want to go? What's your budget? Obviously, four-year colleges are not cheap anymore, so that's a big part of it. And then I think the other big difference really does come back to what is your work ethic? How much like I used to teach at MI, Musicians Institute in Hollywood, doing live sound, and I remember having a student that drove 2 hours every day from her hometown to get to school. Like she was up at whatever, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., came down every day for classes and then couldn't afford to stay down here. So she drove back to her town every night, did that 5 days a week. And I was like, you're going to do just fine because one, you're already doing well in the classes. But if you're willing to put that much work in just to get the education, you're going to make it work. So the shorter programs, the 2-year programs, the 6-month certificate programs, they have their place. They are not going to, there's not a guarantee there that you're going to come out of there knowing what you need to know. Their marketing might say that, but it really does come down to how much work are you going to put in? If you go there and you take advantage of all the facilities and the faculty and all the opportunities that are right there, and you really dig in hard for the 6 months, you can come out, I think, very skilled and really ready to start learning at a job, but get paid for it, right? If you're going to do a 2 or 4 year thing, you've got a little more time while you're soaking it all in. You can have a little more of a measured, balanced life, maybe. You don't have to be quite so focused on it. So it kind of comes down to what are you willing to do and what sounds good to you. But it all can get you there.
That is really, really good information. Couple of different pathways depending how determined you are, how much money you have, a couple of different ways to go about it. That is really, really good to know. So let's talk about circling back to the customer service and the business part of it. How did you fill in those knowledge gaps there? Did you go back to school to learn about the business? Did you learn online? Did you trial and error? How did you accomplish the business side of things?
Yeah, the business side of things, like we'll do like two things, like the customer service and the business side. The business side was a learning experience. And I think where we went at, Lebanon Valley has since amended the coursework a little bit I think there is now it's either like a self-employed or an accounting or a business type course that does address a lot of the things that I had to learn on the job, basically, which was invoicing. Because like I am my own business, even when I wasn't a company and I was just a self-employed independent contractor. At the studio, that's all I was. So I had to invoice every week and then get my money. And then I learned the hard way out here when the county sent me a thing like, "Oh, you're doing work as your own business. Well, guess what? You have to have a business license and a bit you can pay business tax." And I'm fortunate in LA, once you get that paperwork done, I had to pay my penalty the first time. The city here, especially, is very, they really do help out the entertainment industry. We have a lot of tax incentives and breaks. So you can really make a living out here and do it the right way and not do it under the table. And they actually do have all this everything set up where unless you're making a lot of money, you really don't get dinged hard on taxes at all. And I wish I would have known that earlier. I could have, my first couple of years out here, I really just didn't know enough about how to take care of, taxes and deductions and making all that stuff work so that you actually can survive. I was treating it the wrong way. So yeah, if, like I said, some colleges now include that as part of the coursework, which helps. For me, I was fortunate as from other workers, other engineers were like, oh, hey, did you know that if this is tax, this is actually a business expense now, you can actually deduct this. And it's like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. And learning how to invoice, I was fortunate to have people I worked for that were like, hey, you're not charging us enough for the work you're doing. Like you need to raise your rates. And because this hard stuff going out there is trying to give yourself worth and say, no, I'm worth more. Like, sorry, I need to charge you more, or I need to charge you for all the time I did, because I was working. And that's not always easy. I'm not great at that sometimes, where it's like, oh, I don't know, this is a big bill, but it's part of it. You have to learn how to operate as a business and be responsible. And so learning from other people. But if you don't know that and you want to get into this business and you're not going to do it under the scope of a company as an employee, again, there's a lot of information out there. Just Google some stuff about being self-employed, being an independent contractor. Contact someone else who does it and just say, hey, just be upfront. Like, how do you deal with the business side of things? And most of us we're happy to help and like we're happy to respond and say, oh yeah, here's some of the things to watch out for and stuff like that.
I love that. I'm
Yeah.
finding that a lot of people are like that. When I talk to people, with this show, is that so many people are very helpful. They're so friendly. They're, you have a question, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to help. That's really, really, really cool. It's funny talking about, setting your rates and everything. I had done freelance web work for like 20 years, and it made me think of this. There was this one job that I really didn't want to do. It was going to be a pain, and I thought, you know what? I'll just price it really high, and then they'll walk away. And it didn't walk away.
Ah.
So it was nice that like the pay was there, but it was like, this is a pain. I don't want to do this.
And that's a good way to do it, though, is to
Yeah,
to make it work. So you are because the point is whatever you decide you're going to or offer to do the work for, then do the work and be happy doing it, right? And it sounds like you did. And because that's the thing where nowadays I'm fortunate to be steady enough that I'm not doing a lot of crazy deals here and there. But if back in the day when I was getting started out, yeah, if you're going to make a deal, don't sit there all day being upset that you made the deal and wallow in this like, oh, I'm working for this much an hour. Like that, you made the deal. Be done with the business part of it. Now let's focus on the work and do the best work you can do. And because that's the only way to then the next time hopefully have it be a better situation, right?
absolutely, absolutely. And once your name is tarnished, it's very hard to recover from that. Very
Absolutely.
hard.
It's all, it all comes back to that. It really does. It's like I don't get work because of the gear I have. It helps. I don't get work because of the credits I have. And all these other websites will ask for that. Oh, what gear do you use? And this and that. It's like, yeah, it's important to have good gear. And there is a difference between certain kinds of gear. But most people that come here because, and I always am very, thankful and flattered when people do make these comments and they say, "Oh, it's so comfortable here. I just feel at ease and I just feel like I want to go in and be creative." That to me is the biggest compliment because that's the point is I'm trying to make a place where you can come in here, I'm going to record your music or mix it or whatever, but you're going to be comfortable and happy the whole way, and we're going to get you to where you're happy with the final product. That is what brings people back. It's not the microphone.
That is awesome. That is such a great perspective. I absolutely love that. Eric, I could talk to you for hours about this. Unfortunately, I am running short on time, but one thing I like to do whenever I'm speaking with someone, I like to give them the opportunity to talk about a cause they believe in, a project they're working on, more about your business. So whatever you'd like to discuss. The floor is yours.
I'm fortunate that, I always have lots of different projects going on, no one major thing. I will say one thing I've tried to make a point about throughout the years is the music being in schools and the education and stuff. So whether it's a local thing or it's one of the national programs, I'm always a fan. If you have a kid in school or you're trying to support music in schools, I think that's an important thing because the arts in the schools, I think, is a very critical thing, and they definitely need the support from people to keep those programs in place. And I wouldn't be where I was today without all of those.
Well said. Well said. I was speaking with Brian Wolbert, and he expressed a very similar sentiment. So that's really, really cool that we get this doubly from both him and yourself. Eric, it's been absolutely awesome having you on Time We Discuss. We got to learn what it's like to be an audio engineer.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.